Monday.com AI agents took over my work, and I absolutely love it. Chasing deadlines, writing status reports, updating stakeholders. Agents handle the daily grind now. I stay in the loop only when it matters. Create your own AI agent in minutes on Monday.com.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Welcome back to another episode of Investies. I'm your host, Linda Garcia, Texas State Representative and author of the book Wealth Warrior. This week on Investies, we are going to get into the first of a three-part series called Shareholder, Superpowers. These are all the things you really don't know about investing. It is not common knowledge. The three parts are voting, voice, and walking away. The framework for this three-part series was inspired by the economist Hirschman. He wrote a book in 1970 called Exit, Voice, and Loyalty. But before we get into this week's episode, let's go ahead and review what took place in the stock market last week. We did have a short trading week as we were observing July 4th on Friday, July 3rd. The Dow hit a new all-time high. Here I am giving you an update on what took place with the Dow last week. Despite the long episode that we had about the Dow Jones in general, but here is what I have decided. I am still going to give you an update for numerous reasons. As we established last week, sometimes the Dow Jones, when it overperforms or underperforms away from the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, it does tend to conflate what is actually taking place in the market. Like last week, the Dow Jones hits a new record. I want you all to have the information of the Dow Jones. Take it with a grain of salt. You and I both know the truth about this index, and that's it. I'll give you the numbers because it is part of the story, but we here on Investies know that we take that with a grain of salt. Okay, deal? Okay, deal. Jumping back into what I was saying before my intrusive thoughts were judging me for giving you the numbers on the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones was up 1.14% for the week, and as I mentioned, it hit a new record high. The S&P 500 closed up at 1.7% for the week. This is the best week for the S&P 500 in the last 2 months. So I'm curious to know how it would have performed, given if we had a full 5-day week. It is up this morning as of Monday, July 6th, and the NASDAQ closed down about 0.8% for the week. So again, we have that consistent narrative that we have had for almost 2 years now on the valuations for AI. We did get the June's job report. We did get the June jobs report, and that showed that we only added 57,000 jobs. That is half of what economists were expecting. Economists were expecting 110,000 jobs added. Unemployment also ticked up 4.2%. So definitely not a good jobs report there, which makes us question, could this potentially impact the Fed's decision, at least to not do a rate hike, given that Kevin Warsh has been extremely hawkish and leaning towards a rate hike. I'm curious if this would actually make him pause. Remember that the intent of the Federal Reserve, or the two core goals that the Federal Reserve has in its dual mandate, is price stability, which is keeping inflation in check so the dollar doesn't lose purchasing power, and maximum employment, supporting conditions for low unemployment. Basically, its job is to make sure that we can afford things with the money that we make at work. And in order to do that, we have to have work. So the negative jobs report is why the S&P performed so well. It considered that maybe there would not be a rate hike, okay? It hasn't performed this way, as I mentioned earlier, in the last 2 months. I know it was only 1.7%, but this is the best it has performed in a week for a relatively long time. But it's okay, leave it to the NASDAQ to remind us that there are some potential issues and we shouldn't get too excited, specifically with the tech sector. I have a really important reminder for you this week. As of July 4th, the Trump accounts have launched for children. We had an entire episode on how to get a Trump account for a newborn. We got one for my granddaughter. I understand that a lot of us do not agree with Trump's policies. Put that aside, please take the $1,000, take the Trump account, and start investing for your children. This is actually a really big dream of mine. It is something I have written down on a lot of annual goals to potentially do. I did get to do something similar in California where we opened up accounts on investing for low-income families. I do think that it's important for us to own a piece of America and not just be the consumers or the engines behind the growth, but also get to benefit from the profits. We did a full episode with all the details on the Trump accounts. Check out that episode. It is from March 24th. What are Trump accounts and how can you make the most of them? So go back to the Investies catalog, check out that episode. If you've already listened to it, but there's someone in your life that you think will benefit from it, send them the episode. Tell them to get the $1,000. In the episode, I talk to you about how much that account will grow once the child becomes an adult, even if you don't touch it, even if you don't continue investing. But I also get into the benefits if you do continue investing, if you do continue to put money into that account. So please, 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 don't let it only be his supporters that are benefiting from this. We all deserve to have portfolios. Tomorrow, SpaceX joins the NASDAQ 100. If you remember, the rules were changed and the company no longer needed a long waiting period to make sure that they had price stabilization, and they were able to join in just 15 trading days. We should see some volatility surrounding the stock, and we should also see a little bit of a boost given that we have all of the index funds that need to be added. You can listen to that episode back from June 16th, the deep dive on SpaceX.
Good sleep is everything. That's why Ollie's Science Back Support is made with a blend of melatonin and L-theanine for both kiddos and grown-ups. So when your mind won't switch off, you've got something that can help. Your racing thoughts and restless nights won't stand a chance. Find Ollie sleep solutions for the whole family at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, giving you even more specialized support than ever before. Like access to the trade desk, our team of passionate traders ready to tackle anything from the most complex trading questions to a simple strategy gut check. Need assistance? No problem. Get 24/7 professional answers and live help, and access support by phone, email, and in-platform chat. That's how Schwab is here for you, to help you trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
This week's episode is a really important episode, and I honestly can't believe that I have never shared this information on the podcast before. I do talk about it in my course, and actually, this was one of the reasons why I really felt called to start teaching people about investing. Besides the obvious reasons of the benefits of making sure that we're protecting the money that comes into our households and generating additional money, this was actually a deep, profound reason. I don't know. It was bigger than just making money. It was about understanding power. I want to shout out Jacob on our team who had suggested that I talk about this topic. Jacob, this week's episode is for you, my friend. When you purchase a share, you don't just own a teeny tiny little insignificant piece of a company. You are not just an investor. It is so important for you to transition into the mental headspace of being an actual owner. I really love this part of the stock market because it transitions you into sort of thinking about entrepreneurship or having some level of pride in the things that you invest into in the same way that you would as an entrepreneur. And if you've never been an entrepreneur, then this is, I think, in my opinion, a really great way to get into that headspace. And if you are an entrepreneur, this is a great way to strengthen your entrepreneurship muscle. Let's say you purchase stock with the share price of $50. One share costs you $50. As I mentioned, those $50 doesn't just come with the ups and the downs of investing. It also comes with power. It comes with a ballot. You get to vote on who runs the company, who's the board of directors, how much the CEO gets paid, and sometimes on really big questions like how the company interacts with the world, including its employees. It doesn't matter if you have one share or a million shares. That one single share gives you the right to vote on what takes place with a publicly traded company. Most people don't participate. Most people ignore this. And it's actually really important that we participate in the same way that it is important for us to participate in local and statewide and, of course, federal elections. It garners the same level of importance, most especially during a time when there is so much scrutiny towards publicly traded companies, but there's lack of participation. This 3-part series is going to be all about what responsibility and what power comes with your ownership. So this is what I'm calling shareholder superpowers. There are 3 big ones: your vote, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Your voice, where making the company actually answer you is part of your power, and your ability to walk away on purpose, which is also known as divesting. So today you'll know exactly what you're allowed to vote on and how to actually do it. Every year, publicly traded companies hold an annual meeting. This is sometimes referred to as an AGM, or annual general meeting. This is just a gathering where the company reports to its owners and its shareholders get to vote on a set list of items. Prior to the actual meeting, every shareholder receives a proxy statement. So if you have invested in a publicly traded company and you have made it to their annual meeting, meaning that you have been invested long enough for there to be an annual meeting, then you have received a proxy. The legal word is DEF 14A. And this lays out everything that will be up for vote, and it gives you your ballot. A proxy basically means stand-in. You don't have to be there in person to cast your vote. You can cast your vote in advance, online, by phone, or by mail, and it counts as if you were in the room. And voting, of course, just takes a few minutes. Let's talk about the typical things that we can find on a ballot. The first one is the board of directors. So the board is a group of people that the shareholders pick to oversee the company. And then the board of directors gets to hire and fire the CEO. So you can see how there's a system almost of checks and balances, or the ability to hold each other accountable. A lot of the times people think that the CEO is the owner, and you have to remember that we as investors are the owners. We elect the board of directors that oversees the publicly traded companies and also hires and fires the CEO. Also on the ballot is say on pay, and this is typically an advisory vote on how much the top executives get paid. It's usually non-binding, meaning the company doesn't have to necessarily obey it, but a big no on the vote is loud, and it is a public embarrassment if the board doesn't genuinely react to it. Boards want to make sure that they are listening to their shareholders. Remember, we elect the shareholders. And so even though it is non-binding, there could be consequences to not listening to our votes. Ratifying the auditor is also found on the ballot. This is us as shareholders approving the outside firm that checks the company's books. We essentially want to make sure that they pick a firm that keeps them honest. We always want to think about holding the company accountable and making sure that they're being honest, most especially as we've seen publicly traded companies lie about, what they are actually doing. And so again, this is why it's important for us to engage in this process of stock ownership. And lastly, what is typically found on the ballot is shareholder proposals. These are requests that are put on the ballot by shareholders themselves on things like company policies, disclosure, or governance. In part 2 of this series, we're going to talk about who can actually file for shareholder proposals. You have to check with a publicly traded company to see their rules set up on ownership and the different classes of stocks, because that comes with different powers. But the normal rule is 1 share, 1 vote. So if you own 100 shares, you get 100 votes. If you have that 1 share, you still have that 1 vote, and that 1 vote still matters. Let's talk about the different classes of stock really quickly that come with different voting powers. If you put in GOOG into the stock app, you will see 2 different types of stocks. Those are 2 different classes of stock that come with different voting powers. Berkshire Hathaway is another one that also comes to mind with different voting powers. And so check to see what type of class, if there are different classes of stock that you own, so that you understand your voting power. Let's get into how to actually cast your vote. You have to know your record date. The record date is the cutoff day that the company picks to see who owns shares. So you can't just purchase a bunch of shares right before you cast your vote and then think that you can vote. You have to have had ownership on the record date. Also, just a quick caveat to that. If you purchased your shares before or on the record date, it does take a few days to settle because we're going typically through a brokerage account to purchase the shares. And so your purchase date is not the same as your record date. It might be if things settled quickly, but that is not always the case. The second step is to watch for the proxy materials. Those materials are released close to the annual meeting so that you can participate in the proxy vote. And it can either be a physical packet or an email notice with a control number. So keep a lookout from your brokerage account for the proxy materials. The third step is to just vote, and there's 3 easy ways to do that. You can go to the voting website. This is going to be printed on the notice from the proxy materials. You're going to get a control number in those materials. You input that control number onto the voting website, and then you cast your vote. This is the same situation for voting over the phone or voting by mail with the card that they sent. Everything will have your voting number, your control number. And the last step that I mentioned already is understanding that you're voting through your broker. Most people are voting through their brokers. Most people are what is called beneficial owners. Beneficial owners are people that hold shares through their broker. And then there is a registered owner, and a registered owner is listed directly with the company. Your broker will pass along all of the voting materials, the proxy, and get your vote back to the company. In part 2 of this series, we're going to talk about the difference between a registered and a beneficial voter and how to become a registered voter if that is something you choose to do. That finalizes the steps that you need to take in order to vote. Now, let's have a really honest conversation. If you only own 1 share, then why would it matter to vote when there are people that potentially own millions of shares? Here's the first thing that I want you to know is that a lot of the times, if you don't take your vote, the broker will take your vote. They will make note that you are a non-voter, and for some of the things that they can vote on your behalf, they will vote on your behalf. So that is the first thing I want you to know. Will your 1 vote swing the result or the outcome? No, absolutely not. But it's important for you to understand, just like in democracy, you are not voting alone. You're voting with other retail investors, other small shareholders. And believe it or not, we have seen retail investors together swing real outcomes, like pushing out directors, forced pay changes, or passing proposals that the company itself fought against. Also, even if a vote doesn't go the way of a retail investor and institutional investors or executives that hold a lot of shares and potentially have more power depending on the class of shares that they own, you need to understand that the vote will still send a signal. And signals are cheap to send, but they are very expensive to ignore. I have said this multiple times. It's true that publicly traded companies only care about their investors. This is why I am so passionate about getting more people, more common people, the 90%, to invest in the stock market, because right now it is owned by the top 10%. And so we need to break that up. We need to protect our own money. We need to multiply our money. But more importantly, we need our voices heard within these publicly traded companies. Another reason why votes are important, even if it is just one vote, is that it also creates a different type of habit and an identity shift. There's a section in Wealth Warrior, the course, where we talk about the importance of ownership and the responsibility of ownership, and how when you start acting like an owner, you actually are an owner. This comes with a complete mindset shift. And in my opinion, is a really important mindset shift that not only has an impact on you, it may seem really small and insignificant, but I promise you, it has an impact on your entire household and those that surround you. But eventually, you will for sure see the impact of the shift in mindset. So don't be a passive investor. Definitely work on leaning in and being an active investor. A lot of the times I hear people say, I don't have time to be an active investor. And that crushes me because all I can think about is the time that we make to go to work for someone else. Every time I hear that, and I hear it all the time, continuously, it's one of the top 3 things that I hear. I always think about how great would it be to say, I don't have time to go to work. I am an active investor. That is my goal in life. Honestly, that is my dream, is to just be an active investor and multiply the money that I have made. Today's superpower as an investor is your vote. You own a piece of the company that comes with a ballot, and you get to vote on the board of directors, executive pay, the auditor, and shareholder proposals. On the next part of this series, Your Voice, you're going to learn about how powerful your voice is. And I think a lot of you all will be surprised. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Investies. I'm your host, Linda Garcia. If you're enjoying this week's episode of Investies, head over to your podcast player and take a few minutes to rate and review the podcast. This really helps amplify the podcast. Also, make sure that you are subscribed. Investies podcast is a Cosmic Standard production. A very special thank you to the team, Crystal Patino, Asia Simpson, Eliza Smith, and Jacob Winnick. Jacob, I hope you enjoyed your episode. Thank you, and I'll see you next week. And also remember that everything you hear on Investies is for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing on this show is financial advice. Always do your own research and consult with a licensed financial professional before making any investment decisions. I am not a financial advisor.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.